Hello everybody and welcome to another video of Programming for Data Analytics Part 2. Today we're going to continue talking about web scraping, whereas in the last video we were talking about APIs and how you could get access to them and take advantage of them to be able to pull data from a website or from basically the database that runs the website. Today we're going to be talking about more like old school scraping in the sense that we're trying to get information from websites that aren't necessarily made to be scraped. And in fact, I would say that pretty much all websites are pretty much made to not be scraped because that's not something that you really think about when you're designing a website. If your goal is to make your data from your website accessible to users so that they can run the programs and things like that, then you make an API for them and then you either charge them or you offer it for free. But when you're actually building the website, your main goals are going to be user experience, as in like graphical user experience. So if somebody's using it on their phones, they're using it on their laptops, TVs, any sort of different devices they're using, your goal is to make the website be looking nice there. You don't care about the average programmer who's trying to just like get information from your website for their own purposes. And if you did, again, you make an API. That would be the best thing to do. So because of that, all the websites out there are going to be basically a mess when you're trying to scrape information, because you're going to have to kind of dig around and customize your scraper for each and every single website. You might find patterns amongst different websites if they're using the same sort of templates per se. So a lot of websites, they like to use templates that you buy or that a company that they hire to do it will do, and they just kind of modify from there. So it is possible that sometimes something will work for one site, will work for another one, but that would be more of not the common. That would be more of an exception than you think, really, because the idea being that when I make a website or when somebody makes a website, they want it to be unique, right? They don't, especially if it's something where you're selling something, you want it to be a unique user experience that is kind of trademarked to your website, right? So like Amazon is a huge company and they've kind of developed their own system, but it is completely different than something like eBay, right? And if somebody came into the market and said like, I want to sell things, they might go the Amazon route. Like if you look at like, there's a company that sells like pet products. It's kind of like the Amazon of pets. I forget the name of it. But if you look at their website, it looks a little bit like Amazon's website. I mean, it's got the same basics. It's got products, it's got customer reviews, it's got images, it's got prices, it's got all of those things, but they're not particularly in the same format. They're slightly different because it's got that unique touch. Otherwise, probably Amazon would not be very happy about that. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that because every single page is going to be different, at least every single website, you are going to have to sort of customize it. Now, you might say, well, then what's the point of scraping versus like doing something by hand? Well, even if you're just working within one single website, there might be just thousands or thousands of pages within that website, such as it's Amazon, right? So like there's thousands or millions of products in that website. And so they all have the same template. They all have the same sort of basic idea. Like I go to Amazon and I open a product. I know that in the bottom there's going to be reviews and the product description is going to be somewhere in there. Like, the purchasing link is going to be to the right of the website. Those things are in the same locations usually. So it is useful to make something like a scraper for Amazon, because once you get it working for a single product, then it could work for all products, right? So those are the kind of websites where a scraper is really going to benefit, because you want to pull information from a lot of places. But, it can be used for anything you want. It's just, it typically will be useful when you find some kind of pattern that you want to repeat. If every time you're getting information, you're using a different website or using a different way of getting information within the website, that's when scrapers aren't going to be that useful, because you need to know exactly what the procedure is for a human to do it, so that then you can take a computer to do it. So like, if your goal was like, I want to go to this website, I want to go to Amazon, and I want to download all of the Amazon reviews of a product that I tell it, you need to know as a human what instructions to generate for that, to give another human to be able to do it, which would be like, okay, go to this product page, scroll to the bottom, click on like review section so that you can get all the reviews, and then copy and paste the body of the review. Once you have that sort of instruction set, then you can go on about automating it using a scraper and using whatever place you're going to save the information to, like a CSV, and of course Python being your sort of middle ground for all pieces. That's the first step that you gotta do. So you gotta plan things ahead and be able to do it by hand. Then you can think about automating each of those different steps using the tools like the ones I'm going to show you today, which is BeautifulSoup. And but also, if you have an API, then maybe that's something that you would want to use instead. But again, today we're focusing on things where you can't use an API. Okay, so it might be actually useful to come up with a little of this. So step one of what you're trying to get is do it by hand. So go out there and whatever it is you're trying to do, do it by hand. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples today. One of them I'm going to just kind of come up with on the fly, but I'm also going to show you two of them that I found that are really cool. One of them, this is why I got all this Amazon idea in my head, is I actually found one for Amazon. So I'm going to show you that one. But there's tons and tons of examples out there for you to see. So you just Google scraper for and then insert website name, and you'll probably find someone that's done something like it, pretty much, or just for the website that you want. And that's probably, I guess, step 0 is see if someone has done whatever you want before. That way, you don't repeat on somebody else's work, particularly if it's something that's, you know, like GPL, open source, and you can just use it without having to pay for it. But even if there is some paid equivalent, because there's a lot of paid scrapers out there that go beyond. For example, another one that I found that I wanted to point out is I found a tutorial for scraping images out of Google Images search. And the tutorial shows you how to do it, and it's pretty straightforward, and I can discuss that tutorial a little bit. But at the bottom, it also says, by the way, we have a scraper where you don't have to do any of this. All you gotta do is you gotta put in the search line of the image you want, and everything is done behind the scenes. And they do all the downloading, so you don't risk getting blocked by Google. That's it. That's, you know, it's very, very straightforward. And of course, they have a free sort of limit, so you can test it out, see if it works for your company or your project. And then they have a paid version, and that's typically how some of these scrapers go. It ultimately comes down to, like, is it worth investing your time to do this from scratch, or are there paid versions that you can take advantage of and save money ultimately because you can get things done quicker? You don't have to pay a developer to do it if you're not doing it directly. Or should you just go in and do it from scratch and just, you know, it's like, okay, I don't have to pay anybody ever for this, and if I get it working, then it's in-house, it's valuable, something that I've done, and so on. So there's that. Also, the fact that, remember, with a scraper, there's a lot of maintenance involved because the website formatting may change. I mean, I know, so let's think about something like Facebook, right? Facebook formatting has changed over the years. If you look at what Facebook looked like when it first came out in like 2008 or something, it's completely different than what it is today, right? And so people even complain about, like, oh, they changed the appearance of Facebook, and they get pissed off or really happy. It's all over the place. But ultimately, Facebook is doing that because they want to remain fresh, right? Relevant. And so every time that they change something in the code, whether they change the appearance or behind the scenes, your scraper might break. And so you got to go back in there, and it's almost like starting from scratch. I mean, particularly if they do like a complete makeover of the website, you're really starting from scratch at that point. If it's just a minor thing, then, you know, you just got to fix it and you're good to go. But that's kind of the issue, and that's why the paid scrapers kind of work out, because, you know, at that point, if you tell the developer, hey, your scraper's not working anymore, and then they either fix it or you just stop paying, so you don't have to worry about that. You kind of have that reassurance that it's going to keep going. Unless, of course, they make it impossible at that point to scrape because they do some behind the scenes, and then you're screwed anyways. But at least then, again, you just stop paying the developer and you move on. Okay? So, again, this is where you've decided to take the approach that you're going to do it yourself. So you go and do whatever you want by hand. And then once you see that works and you kind of have a set of instructions, so go ahead and just kind of write those down. So, like, write down instructions to replicate a human scraping of it, or a human performed scraping. In other words, imagine you're going to go and tell your neighbor to do something from a website and download some data that you want. Write those instructions down and see if they could do it. And if they can, those is a pretty good set of instructions, right? It'll include things like go to this URL, click here, enter this data here potentially, go here, download this, save it to this file, etc. Once you have those instructions done, then you go on and automate them. Automate each step. Now, don't worry necessarily about going in order, like, oh, I really need to automate step 1 first and then step 2. You can go on and about automating it in pieces and whatever feels more natural. I think that's the best way to do it. That way you don't focus yourself too much on something that you might not end up needing. Also, very important, don't try to over-engineer the scraping. If it works, that's it. You're good to go. You can try to simplify it later on, but once you're fully completed with the entire scraping process, should you think about simplifying it, okay? A lot of the times, people will waste a lot of time trying to create some sort of parsing system or trying to create some system that like generates perfect URLs to go there every time, only to find out that they didn't need that at the end because they could have just like done a much simpler method, or simply they didn't need to just have URLs. You could have just had somebody enter it once and then not worry about it again, and that was just not worth the investment of time. So come up with your prototype, make sure it fully works, and then you can think about simplifying it and optimizing it, okay? Don't try to optimize early in the game, and that applies not just for scraping, but development in general. Optimization should not be something that you should do when you start. It should be something that gets added later on in the game, okay? And I think this, in fact, I would say that even applies to all of engineering in general, not just computer science. Okay, but yeah, automate each step, and then, basically once you have the full product, then you can worry about optimizing it. And also generalizing it if you can. So it works for other things. All right. So for the first example, I am going to just go in and show you how to just scrape some information from UNLV's website. So the first thing you should do, though, I guess step 0, is get the required software for this. And so fortunately I didn't have it installed in the VM that I use for class, so I installed it, and now you can see what it looks like. It took seconds to install. I installed 2 packages, one of them being BeautifulSoup 4, and the other one being HTML5lib. This is the main one that you want, but I also recommend you get this one. I will be using both today, so please make sure that you have them installed. I just did pip3 install BeautifulSoup 4 and then pip3 install HTML5lib, and as you can see, this is what it looks like when it successfully installs. Always check when you install a package that the last line says something around this line, successfully installed, so that you know that it actually worked. And you just, because a lot of times you're like, oh, let me just write in pip, and then you see some stuff printed out and you just assume it's like it installed and it's actually an error message, and you're kind of confused. So actually look at what it's outputting, and see if it says it installed it successfully. Of course, another way to test it is just to try to run the code afterwards, right? But it's still good to check beforehand. Okay, actually, before I go any further, I want to show you BeautifulSoup's website. So, as always, one of the great resources for documentation is usually the website itself of the package. In this case, just Google BeautifulSoup 4 and you'll get this website. I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is the official one. Yeah, crummy.com, yeah. And so there is some examples on here that you can see. There is discussion of the installation. You can see there's also apt-get way of installing it for Linux. I recommend you stick to the pip install like I did. And then for the parsers, you can install HTML5lib, which is the one I installed. There is also LXML. I'm not going to talk about that one, but you're more than welcome to explore it on your own time if you want. I suppose this is a nice little comparison of what they are in here. So you can see that HTML5lib is extremely lenient. That's kind of a good thing for us because when you're scraping, things are messy and kind of not dirty in a sense that it's kind of difficult to sometimes be able to extract useful stuff because it's a mess. And so by being lenient, it's way more flexible to avoid issues that you'd otherwise like hard stop. Like you just give up at that point. But because it's lenient, it does slow down. So, you know, there's that. Whereas LXML is fast, but it's not as lenient per se. In fact, you see the word lenient here versus extremely lenient. So you can see that. So anyways, don't worry right now if you don't know what that means yet. We'll talk about this XML magic in a minute. So yeah, you're welcome to read this on your own. Again, I'm going to introduce you to this anyways, but there's so much. I mean, you could just spend hours or days, you know, learning about Beautiful Soup and still not know everything. It's a really, really powerful piece of software that if web scraping is something that you want to really do, then you should definitely explore it and be able to be proficient with it. If not, then, you know, there's always documentation and tutorials you can follow just to get what you need done for that day. Okay. One last thing I want to show you here before I close this is actually this. Actually, no, I'll show you what code looks like later. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. So once you have it installed, so once you run it like that, then let's just go ahead and just, you know, start coding some stuff. So here, let me just load. Here we go. Okay. So here we have the UNLV website faculty directory for the Department of Computer Science. Okay. And so I want to scrape some basic information from here. I want to be able to scrape the names of all of the faculty in this directory. Now, what is the URL for this? The URL for this is up here. It's www.unlv.edu/cs/directory. I could probably write a regular expression or write a pattern to be able to do this, not just for the computer science department, but probably for the entire university. But for now, we're going to start simple. We just want to download this. Now, of course, if this is literally the only thing you want to do and like this is like a one-time usage, then I would just literally go in here and like, you know, copy this and then copy this and like put it in a file and call it a day, right? So this is more of like if the department had like 1,000 employees in it, and then that's when I would be like, okay, at that number, it's probably worth my time to create the scraper. Then it would take less time to create the scraper than it would to actually go in there manually and copy and paste every single employee's name. 1,000. I think that would be a good threshold. Actually, probably for me, in my case, because I know some scraping now, I would say about 100 maybe with that threshold. Maybe no, actually, well, I already did it to make sure it would work. And it took me maybe 10 minutes to do it just because I was exploring it. So, okay, so whatever, how many names I can get in 10 minutes, maybe I can get like 50 names in 10 minutes. Okay, so 50 would be the threshold, okay? Another case is like, even if it was like only 10 names, but like imagine that this was like an ever-changing file, okay? Like imagine like you hired and fired people on a day-to-day basis. Then a scraper would be cool, even if you only had 10 names to deal with, because that's repetition that you have to do. Otherwise, you have to pay someone to every single day go on there and check the names and see if they get updated, right? So it's not just whether you just want to save time for like a one-time massive task, but also if it's a recurrent task that you want to keep track of. Last time we talked about Twitter. Twitter can be useful to get recent information at the moment that it gets posted on Twitter. And so, that's an example of like not necessarily a lot of information you want, but recent information. You can think of it that way too here. You want to, it's not just about automating to save tasks on big tasks, but also just the fact that you can do recurrent tasks automatically daily or per second even, keep updating it. Okay, so because I want to be able to pull this, the first thing that I want to teach you here is how to understand how this website is actually made. So if you right click on any of the elements on this, so for example, let's start by right clicking here. You can go to what is known as the inspector. Now, if you're using Chrome, there is something very similar. Just Google inspector, but you'll be able to see it as well. But basically, what the inspector does And another way to access it, by the way, is you can go to here. Hold on, put that there. So go to settings here, more tools, or is it more tools? Yeah, more tools, and then web developer tools. Okay, so you can open it that way too, but it's better to open it how I did, because it automatically links it to that piece of code that builds that little piece of the website. So like if I want to see where this D is in the code of the website, I right click on it, I put in inspect, and it automatically takes me to the piece of code that actually creates that element on the website. I don't know if this is the best. I question this website's formatting, I guess, the way it's built here, but you can see that they have an entry for every single letter. Actually, no, because they could be clickable, yeah, so that's okay. But yeah, so you can see that this code right here is what makes the website. Make sure you're watching this in HD so you can actually read this. So you can click on these things, and sometimes they'll maximize, although I guess this is as small as it goes, yeah. But you can see, for example, this. So this div, so div is like divider, and it divides different sort of pieces of your HTML or code or CSS, whatever you're working with. In this case, we have this section is for the entire like alphabet, this little block, and you can see it kind of highlighted up there with the little sort of dotted boxes. So it's indicating that the code inside of this section is going to represent the code that builds the entire alphabet. When I make that, I open that section, then you can see that each letter is individual. We put there all the way until the bottom. The all, I guess. The all is the last letter, even though it's not a letter, but yeah, it's a button. So you can see, so I guess the first thing here that I kind of want to kind of point out is the hierarchy of things, okay? So websites are typically built in sort of a hierarchy. And so what you'll end up seeing is like, let's say you have a website, okay? And in this website, there is like a sub window or subsection. So, I mean, I think we're all familiar with something like Amazon. So I'm going to use it as a basic example. So with Amazon, you might see here like pictures of a product. Here you'll see things like purchasing the product. And here you'll see things like a description, right? So you have the description, you have your purchase, and here you have like your image. And of course, there's more stuff in the bottom, but I'm just looking at the top for now. So within the description section, you will find a couple of different things, right? So let's just kind of make that down here. So let's kind of zoom that in or enhance. So within the description section, you'll find things like the title, big letters. So if I look at what like it would look like, it's like here you have a title in big letters. So let's say they're buying it's not probably called A, it's called like maybe like a HD TV 40-inch by Sony or something, okay? And then after that, there's probably like a subtitle or like, it's just like the best TV ever or something. And then some description talking about the TV, like this TV has 144 hertz refresh rate, then it's green because it doesn't use as much power, etc., right? So basically your description is made up of a couple of things, like a title, sort of like a subtitle, description bullet points, and it could potentially have more things. Like I think at the bottom there's another thing, like there's a button to expand that area and so on, right? So that's what your description is made of. For the purchase, we have kind of a similar thing. So we have the price, whether there's some coupons or something, the shipping time, that's usually up there, and so on, right? So I'll make that bigger. So price, coupons or discounts more, shipping times, and even other sellers, right? So the way you organize this within the website's description, like on the code, is you start out by saying something like, okay, we have Amazon. And within Amazon, we have the 3 sections. So we have, like I said, the description section. image section and the, what I call it, purchase? Yeah, purchase section. And within the purchase section, or here, let's actually talk about the description one. Within the description one, so like, that has its own hierarchy, right, that I talked about. So it has a title. So another way of doing this could be like a tree. So we have the Amazon tree. Huh? Get Amazon. Okay, very cool. And then from there we have purchase section, the image section, and then the description section. And then we have, like I said, the title, the subtitle, and so on. Okay, so that's a hierarchy, right? And so that is kind of the same way that the code is organized usually. And each of the hierarchies has usually the word div in front of it to have like the divider, okay? And you'll see things tabbed out like you see it here where things are like spaced like that. Same with this one being spaced to kind of indicate that idea of the hierarchy, okay? So when you're looking for something on a website, you're probably going to be looking at a specific spot. And if you move out of that hierarchy, you'll see more bigger and bigger. So I'm going back to our example here. If I can, no, that won't work. There's a way to change the font size of this, but I don't want to do it right now. So yeah, you'll see that that's why things look a little bit like horizontal, like diagonal right here, because it's going in hierarchy. So let's start from the innermost one and build our way out. So here we got, make that big, there we go. So we have like the A, right? So the A, that's like the deepermost hierarchy. So that's like the title of the description of the website entirely, okay? So the A, that little object right there is part of the entire alphabet hierarchy. That alphabet hierarchy is part of what is known as a wrapper, which is like another section. It's a bigger section. So you can think about like the square there being inside of the bigger section. That whole thing is part of this bigger block right here. So for that bigger block, that makes up basically the entire, all the way to the, it contains, from what I'm seeing here, it contains the alphabet, the names of the people, but not the footer part. So all the way until the bottom of the names, but it doesn't include the numbers 1, 2, and 3, because that one's apparently in this section here, okay? So this hierarchy contains that, and then that's split into this section here. And I guess there's no other things there other than that, but okay, that one, if you split it, it's split into individual different buttons there for the pages, right? So here you have the button for the 1, button for the 2, and so on. So you can see there's that hierarchy of that, but going back to the other hierarchy, this one, which is the one that was part of the alphabet. So you can see that that hierarchy belongs to yet another hierarchy, which is this one. This one contains both the alphabet and the names of the people, and also the numbers at the bottom. Okay, so you can see that within this. In fact, here, let's draw the tree for that. Okay, so we're kind of building the tree backwards, I guess. So at the most bottom part, we have a tree with all the letters, right? I'm not gonna write all the letters, but like you can all the way to Z, and all of those things are connecting to one parent, which is the entire alphabet. And I guess the all at the end, because there's an all button, okay? That, we'll call that like the alphabet. That is part of a bigger section of the tree, which has what was the wrapper, which they called glossary wrapper. I guess the word glossary, because you know, A to Z is like an index, so yeah. That kind of contains not just the letter, so where these look like letters and this looks like that bar of letters, this contains the bar of letters, but it also contains the space at the bottom. It's just part of the way that things are organized. From there, we have a bigger hierarchy. I actually don't know what that one was called. Let me just very quickly go back and see. It's called view content. In fact, let me show you where I got that from. View content from here, okay? So that one you can see view content right there is where it's coming from. So that, if you can't read that, let me write it for you what it says there. It says div class view content. And then there's a bunch of text, which of course is because that's actually the code that's in there. And then we have the word div. Yeah. Okay, so like this right here. Oops, hold on, switch over to this. There we go. So this is what I'm looking at right there. That's what's being highlighted that you can't really read right there. But what this means is because literally the code for this is going to look like this. Wait, shouldn't there be a slash there? Yeah, there's a slash. I just forgot to write it. Let me write the slash. The slash in the HTML is kind of like the ending tag of something. So when you start something, you know, you just write the tag. But at the end, you put a backslash. Or I guess that's a forward slash. A forward slash. And then the word div. So like, you can imagine like if in my own code, I said something like start. When I want to end my start tag, I usually do the forward slash and then write the word again of the same tag. Okay, so that's just like some HTML thing that you'll get used to. But fortunately, you don't even need to know it because the inspector kind of automatically does the wrapping for you, and you see it like this. And when you're maximizing it, what you're really doing is you're looking at the code that's in here. That's what these 3 dots represent. Okay? So anyways, this is what, and this is important, make sure you understand this. This is like the title of that whole section. Okay, so this is the view content section. The view content section contains all of the glossary stuff that we saw, but it also contains the hierarchy of that bottom part. So of the numbers right here. So that one is its own little mini hierarchy. In fact, let me check what it's called very fast. So it's called navigation. So this is called navigation. And within that navigation, and by the way, the place I saw that is right on, where is it at? I am working on this, hold on. Here we go. Oh, actually that's a role technically. So it's called pager nav, I guess, but also says role navigation. So I guess either of those could work. Or actually combination of those could work. But yeah, so I'm just getting the names from those things here, okay? And then that little hierarchy contains a couple of things. But the most important one is this one, which is called the pagination JS pager items. In there, you will find page 0, page 1. And there's probably a page 2 or 3 somewhere in there. Or at least there should be. Maybe here. Nope, that's page 0. Oh, or probably because there's no page. Well, there should be a page 3 because the button shows up there. Ah, here we go, page 2. So the hierarchy here is we got this JS item thing. So this navigation kind of has a JS item, whatever. Don't worry much about the names now. And there you have the buttons 1, 2, 3. So the JS contains all the buttons basically. Like that. That's your JS item. In fact, it's called pagination JS pager items. And then from there you got the buttons. Okay. So going back to the top. Sorry, it's easy to get lost amongst like massive amounts of hierarchies here. Where am I? Hold on. Inspect there. Okay, so there we go. So we build our way up from view content. Okay, so we're at view content. So that one is part of a bigger one, which is called employee block. That one kind of makes more sense, more real name because it's employees. So you could think of that as being higher in the hierarchy. Now, this tree doesn't necessarily have to have multiple children for each branch. It could. In this case, it's an example of where it doesn't. So it's a single branch, unary. But more of like when you get to the bottom, especially here because it's an alphabet, you have a lot of children in that branch. But so it's more of like a vertical there. So like this. So really, you can see that here we have multiple children, but here we only have one, right? From employee to view content. That's okay. That's kind of expected too. So going back to here, we got, let's see, so view element, form group, blah, 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 and field item. So I guess goes all the way up to field item. These are all single parents. I'm going to just keep going until here, which is still field item, I guess. It goes even higher, until content. That one's kind of like the big one, I guess, because it contains pretty much everything you can see here all the way to the bottom, including now this related advisory link, but not the bottom, not the footer stuff. So somewhere in this hierarchy, there is this whole section for the related thing. If you want to see where that is, we could inspect it. That has its own hierarchy. That's part of the field item hierarchy, which is having a unique name. Some of the times they don't have the best of unique names because, again, they're not. This was not meant for somebody to scrape. They just kind of did it with whatever they felt like it. So this is like paragraph type column paragraph ID 91782 paragraph view mode full call XS, which is a certain size, 12 call SM. That defines the size of this thing, the square, offset 2. So that's kind of like the name, and you're just kind of like, okay. Let's look at where the word advisory board is actually. CS about advisory. So there we go. That one has a nicer name to it. It's part of what is called as the list group, and then for the field item, which then goes up to the bigger field item thing, field name, which goes back up to the square. Okay. So, it can be tricky trying to analyze all these things. But ultimately, hopefully you're getting the idea of how the hierarchies work, right? And at the top of this hierarchy, so if we go all the way to the top, we'll get like the entire website basically. So here we go. This one's just called content. And it's really nice when it has something like here. So this one, let me write it. I know you can't see it. I'll switch over in a second. Let me just write what it says there first. It says div class, or sorry, not that one actually, the one beneath it. Div ID content class equals ... and then you're closing the tag. Okay, so what that is saying, what I have right now pointed to, which I'm about to switch to the iPad so you can see it, is that div ID content class. This is really nice because this ID, you can think of it like a variable name. You can search for that within your scraper for these IDs, and it's nice because you can identify things that way. Okay, so that is on that level of the hierarchy here. Parallel to the content section, you also have the footer section, which is probably the bottom one. So that's its own hierarchy, but it's on the same level. So like, if we just move this tree down a little bit, like there's a bunch of stuff here that I'm skipping. So like a bunch of connections, but all the way here at the top, we have this content section, which is parallel to the footer section, which is parallel probably to some sort of header section, which is probably, let's see where that one is. So this one's apparently its own section, system container, and then the navbar. That's the top header stuff. So that's the navbar. So let's go down further so you can see it better. So the navbar is its own section of the website. So we'll call that the navbar. And so all these three are kind of on the same level. So let's switch over to the iPad. And then those three make up the website, which is the main divider that will be at the top of this code probably. So this right here, which is called dialog off canvas main legacy CSS wrapper. Okay. Technically there's stuff above it, which is called body, and then the HTML tag at the beginning, but yeah. So there's your hierarchy of things, okay? All right, so now that we understand a little bit about how that works, we're trying to get just a name. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the name and look at the inspect. And now we can see the hierarchy above it, but more importantly, we can see here that this is called view rows. And each view row appears to be the block that contains all the information that we really want, because we want the names, but it also has other stuff, right? Now, is there one for each one? Probably. Oh, nice. So they're actually split by, so view rows contains the entire block, but within that, there is little divs, but they don't have labels really. At least for the one with the name, they don't have a label, but the stuff beneath it does have a label. So for example, for the address, it actually is called class address, and then it contains actually the address itself. It's not split between office number and building number, but like mail code, this is called mail code, and it does contain the mail code. And it has the word view label, mail code, and then field content 4019. Okay? Don't DOS these people, by the way. But yeah. Yeah, so, okay, so that's kind of how it's distributed. So first, let's just try to see if we can get the entire block of names, okay? So that's going to be our goal. So we're going to put this to the side for a minute here. And we're just going to first import what we need to run the scraper. So we're going to import some of the libraries and then get the link. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, I'm going to click here, import requests, and then import the, actually we're going to just get a specific parser from BS4, which is our BeautifulSoup library. We're going to import BeautifulSoup. Okay, and so the request is because we're going to basically try to get the code from the website to be able to download it. Okay, and so the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to make a string variable per se, and then just copy the URL. So I'm just going to copy and paste it right there. Okay. So obviously you could, you know, if you were doing this for the entire UNLV directory, then, you know, you could automate the system. Maybe make a list in Python that has all of the, well, make a scraper that downloads all the different departments, and then feed that to your other scraper that then, or to a Python script that generates these URL links so that this scraper can run. That'd be pretty cool, actually. So yeah, all right. So we have the URL, and so now we're going to do the request on that URL. Okay. So before I go any further, let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Okay. So I'm just going to say print R and see if it runs first of all. Okay. So we got a response 200. Okay. Very cool. I don't remember what my HTML code is for that. So let's just look at HTML 200 code, status code. Success. Okay. So whenever you get a 200, so these numbers, when you get a website, like, you know, when a website doesn't work, you get that one code 404, I think, not found, right? Have we all seen that before? Like when a website says 404 not found. In fact, maybe you can Google image an image of what that looks like in case you've never seen it, which it would blow my mind. Here, Google has one too. Open link in new window. LifeWire. Just trying to get the image that they had. Open image in your tab. Yeah, this one. So we've all seen something like this, right? When we search for something, we see like 404, you know, the page does not exist or something. That's known as an HTML status code, and there's a lot of them. There's a list of them. In fact, you probably can go to like developer Mozilla and then like see all of them. Within those, one of the codes is actually 200. That's a good one though. That means that this request succeeded. So that means that this actually succeeded, okay? So we're like, okay, cool. Well, can we like see what is in here? Well, this is an object, so you could probably just use content. I'll run that now. Content is not callable. Oh, well, I guess you're not. Oh, right. It's not a function. It's a variable, I think. So let's just run it again. So this is what the actual content that we're getting back from the website is. And you're like, holy smokes, like what is this? Like, this is hardcore. Well, this is literally the same thing we were looking at in the inspector. In fact, let me bring that in again. So like, you know, if we open the inspector up, let's go to the top of this. You'll see here, this says doc type HTML, and then it says HTML class JS. If you look here, this is the same thing. Doc type HTML. Well, at least it said that so far. But then we have, where's the HTML class stuff in there? Well, it's somewhere in there. Probably, maybe not at the top, but it is somewhere in there. Basically, most of the stuff that you see there is going to be here. It's just kind of really smashed together, per se. So obviously, you know, this is a struggle if you were actually dealing with this, right? As you can see there. So let's actually make this nice. How do we make it nice? Well, we use BeautifulSoup for that. So let's go ahead and make a soup. BeautifulSoup, that is. Okay, and then we make that more readable. So take the content, and then we need a parser. So what we need is we need to parse this information so that it's nicely readable. What does parser mean again? I've mentioned this a couple of times in the lectures, but like I want to just make sure that we understand what a parser is. What a parser is a special machine where you feed it information that it looks unorganized, but there is a pattern to it. And that pattern is in there, but it's not very easy to see for the human eyes. What the parser is going to do is it's going to detect that pattern based on what you tell it and actually split the information into a more organized method that you want. It's going to parse that in. The simplest form of a parser could be something like a tokenizer. So like you take in a bunch of text and you separate it by a specific token, such as a line feed or a space. You're parsing information. You're taking that information, you're sort of organizing it in a nice way. But you still can't make organization where there's none. There has to be some. It's just harder to see. So like, even though this looks like a complete mess because all the text is grouped up together, it's technically not. It's still somewhat organized enough for the parser to do it. Now, why are the different parsers that we were talking about, one being more lenient than the other one? Because it, you know, even though there's a pattern here, it may not be easy to detect. So we can use some sort of shortcuts to doing that, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So you need that flexibility for that. And that's why some parsers work better than other ones, but the cost is speed and or potential bad data being parsed in correct ways and things like that. Okay, but we're going to use the one that I told you, which is the HTML5 lib. And why is that underlined? I don't know. Oh, that's right. It has to be actually a string that we're passing in, telling it. Okay, so if I do that, nothing's going to happen. Well, yeah, it's not going to print anything, but it worked actually. And so let's go ahead and actually see what that looks like. Okay, so whereas before we were printing out the contents like this, in fact, I'll leave that there, just comment it out. Let's see what that looks like now compared with what soup got us. So I'm going to go, in fact, I'm even going to use not just soup, but I'm going to use the prettify function in soup, which will make it, as its name implies, prettier. So now let's see what we got. So scroll all the way to the top. Okay, this is the top. Oh, it cuts up the rest because it's, you know, the terminal here. You can see things are spaced out now. So this looks a little bit more like what the inspector was showing us, actually. You see that? In fact, you can see things kind of spaced out to show the hierarchy of things. And if we look here at like here, we can see div class view rows. So that matches what we saw earlier here when we were looking at this. See, view rows. So this organization now looks a lot like this. In fact, it looks pretty much the same to me, literally identical. Only difference is that when we click on this, this says H4 Chuck Tesler H4 on the same line, whereas this broke it and it says like H4, and then in its own line it has the name and then that. In this case, it says Kishore. Where's Kishore in here? Oh, I guess I got the one from the second page. That's pretty cool. Or did it? Oh, maybe the Kishore is in this first page and I just didn't see the name. Yeah, okay, here we go. There it is. My bad. Okay, so if we inspect that one, we will see that this looks literally like what we see there, except it actually split this into 3 lines, which is nice because I mean, I even like that. That's really nice. So you can see that this is what we want. And where is it found? It's found in this divider, which is part of the hierarchy. If we go beneath it, then we also have things like text secondary that we could use. We have this divider called address that we could probably use to get address information. There's a lot of things we can pull from this, right? But like I said, our first goal was just to get the names. So let's just do that. Let's get the names, okay? So, but you can see already there, like text is looking much prettier now. So BeautifulSoup has done its job now. It's organized the data in a way that it's searchable and that you can try to extract information from it. here you have sort of two choices. You can keep using BeautifulSoup, or you could export this into a text file and then use like regular expressions or anything you want, Python script, whatever. I'm going to keep using BeautifulSoup because we already talked about regular expressions, right? Especially because of this search ability. That's really what makes it powerful. Okay? So the first thing I want to show you is how it can find things, okay? So I'm going to use soup every time I want to refer to this object that I just created, this soup from the website, this BeautifulSoup. And I'm going to use the find all function. There is also find, you can play with that on your own time. Just jump right to find all. And what find all does is you specify what you're looking for. So I'm like, I'm looking for a division. And what the division is called is going to be class underscore equals, because that's literally the name it shows here. Actually, does it have the underscore equal? I don't think it has the underscore equals. Let's try it with and without. Oh, no, sorry. In this case, that is part of the name. Yeah, it's just a thing with it. Actually, let that be. You have to put the underscore there so it works, I think. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in views rows. See, I tested this line before and I think it didn't work with that, but we'll try it. So I'm going to go ahead and just print that out first and see what happens. Oh, did not mean to do that. Okay, run it. Oh, here, hold on. It's coming out this print so that we don't have our terminal flooded. Well, it's still going to get kind of flooded, but yeah. All right, so run it. We are getting still a bunch of stuff. But technically speaking, this bunch of stuff is only related to the views rows. See, we're not getting anything non-related to views rows anymore. We're starting here, and it's actually a list. You see the bracket here is the opening on the list, and if I scroll down to past this name, fax, email, here, there's probably a comma in there. It's really hard to see, but there's probably a comma. Right here, there's a comma. That's the end of one of the first items of a list. So this is a list you're getting back, because you're getting back all of the matches that you're looking for. Just to see if it works without the equal. See if without the underscore. Yeah, so it does, the reason why they added it is because otherwise Python gets confused. So, yeah. Okay. So this gives us a list of items, okay? Let's say we want to just see the first item of that list. Well, we can probably just say 0 like that and then run it. Yep, now we only got one item, okay? So we can see in this one item is the Chuck Tesla because it's the first one there. And we can see it has the word Chuck Tesla. It still has all this div code in it, which is not that nice, but at least it got us that piece of code. Within this code though, I want to get rid of all of the tag code and just get the raw text. Or I could also do an additional search, feeding this in to get the name. So maybe we'll do that when we do the address, okay? So we'll come back to that. So I want though, however, to just get the text from that. So what I can do to change this to get the text is I can call the get on this specific item that I want, which contains, I'm going to call the function get text. Okay, and then I'm going to run it. And as you can see now, it got rid of all the tags and I am getting just the pure text, which is nice. I'm almost there. Like I almost just got the name. Now I really just got to clean it up. Like just get the piece. So it looks like there's some stuff here. But other than that, I think I'm almost there. So now I want to clean it up further. Then I think BeautifulSoup's done its job. I can do the rest using Python. So maybe I can take the same line. So we're still using the same line. And then I'm going to split lines so that I can get rid of like line feeds and things like that. And I'm going to print that out first just to see what I get by using split lines. Okay, so by splitting lines, I'm making a Python list here, and you can see that it's split it all into different pieces of the text into like a list. Very nice. So now I know from this that the name is actually the second item of the list, right? This one right here. So I can just go ahead and access that one. So I can comment that out. So show you my step process. So I'm gonna just get, it's an array, so I'm gonna get, I guess, the second item, which will be there. So if I do run that, I think I'll be good to go. I'll be home. Yeah, and there we go. Do we have some space around it or not? I don't think we have space, but here, let me get rid of this again and run it. Nope, there's no spaces because you can see the quote start and end there. So perfect. So yeah, there we go. We have, oh no, I broke it. I broke it. It was working fine before, and now it stopped working. Run it again. Oh, right. It's not the first item. It's the second one. And there we go. We got the name. Okay, so we got one person's name. Now, how do we get all the names? Well, now we know the exact line that we got to run, right? But here, this 0 here is because we're getting the first one. So if I put in 1 there, I should get the second person's name. There you go. So what do I need to do? I just need to do a loop then. So again, I'm going to leave these all commented out because I want you to try these out on your own and experiment like I did. This is the process of building the scraper. You're exploring where that information is located. Now that I actually got what I want for one of them, I'm going to try to make it work for all the names. Okay, so I know this worked so far. I just have to change this to be a loop. So let's go ahead and go back to the level here and put this in a loop. So I'm going to say, where's my initial search? So my initial find all, this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a loop and say for like each one. So like for I in whatever these results gets me, I'm going to go ahead and print out the results of that. So I dot, and then put in all the stuff afterwards, which was the get text, blah, 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 blah. So all this stuff here. Okay. So now, instead of getting just the spot 0, this is going to loop around 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And for each one, I'm going to run this. Okay. In fact, just to show you the thought process of that, let's just do it without doing any of this. If I do that, I'm going to go back to how I had it before. In fact, here I'm going to try exit so it just runs once so we don't get our terminal flooded. You can see again, it's printing out the entire code for Chuck Tesler only. If I let it run twice, then it would print out, or if I just let it run nonstop, it's going to print out all of the names. So you can see here all the way. Oh, it actually didn't cut them off. I thought it would cut them off at the terminal. But you can see like, here we have, it's so hard to see the names because it's just a bunch of text. Somewhere in here is the beginning of each name by just showing the name. So we have mail code, address. So here we got Hussein Al-Jafir, right? So I think he's the second one on there. Yeah. So yeah, this works. So because we know that works, then for sure we know that this is going to work, right? Well, I would say 95%. And there we go. It did work. So we got all the names and they're clean. If you're processing data, say open up a CSV file, save it there. You got yourself a little spreadsheet. You're done, right? Go post these on like a website that data mines, like Rate My Professor, right? They have all the names of faculty. They probably have some kind of web scraper that works like this. So maybe not. I don't know. Actually, no, because I think students upload their own names, right? So maybe not. Maybe they outsource that work to the students themselves. That's pretty smart. Okay. But if I wanted to make my own version of this, like actually, what is that one? Coursera. Coursera, I think, is the one that actually is not user-based. It's actually, they automate that. So they probably do something like this, okay? Very cool, very cool. So we've succeeded in doing what we wanted. Let's see what else we can get from this. Where are we at in the video? We're 58 minutes, okay. Like I said, I want to show you 2 more examples, but that's more of just showing you like what's done before already. So this is like the one we're building ourselves. And then I jump from like nice to like, whoa, check out all these things we can do. So let's see if we can get something else out of this. Yeah, so well, actually, if we go back to just printing out the list like this. So here, let's leave this here again. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna comment it out. Now we're gonna start messing with it. So let's get rid of the split lines again, so we can see the array for each one. Let's say we want to get the mail code for all of them. So the mail code is here. So one way I could do it is I could just find out what that index is and then call it a day. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I'm gonna guess at this point, maybe 15. Let's see what that gets me. Did it die? Oh, here, run it again. It must just be blank. Who knows? Okay. Awesome. Let's just run it one more time. So maybe let's just do I really don't want to count. Let's try 22. Sure. Okay, so that's the phone number. So actually, okay, instead of keep commenting in and out, let's just get let's uncomment this line. I think that was the one that prints out the list. So we got the phone number. So the phone number is here. So that is going to be probably 1, 2, 3. So I wasn't around right. It was probably like maybe like 16 or 17. Let's try those. See if either one of those will give it to us here. Oh, that's just a phone number still. Okay, so maybe do 14, 15. Oh, we did 15 already. Oh, it was 14, so we were so close. We were so close from the beginning. My guess wasn't too bad. Oh well. Okay, so now that we know that works. All right, so that's how we get the number. But why is that getting it for only one person? Ah, I think I have a. Oh, maybe that's why. Maybe because the list for each one might be different. It's possible. It's possible. Let's see. So if I go back to 1, it prints out all the names, right? Ah, so maybe what I'm thinking is there's each of the lists are a slightly different size. That's why the numbers aren't matching per se. Maybe. That's just a guess. Let's try printing out this one. No. Which was it? Is it this one? No. Okay, so then it's definitely so. So print out this one, but like do like let's print out 1. No, not that one. This is the one that I want. Okay, so this one, let's print out here. Get rid of that. Okay, so then change here from that. Let's print out maybe the name after it. Name 1. Okay, so let's see. So we have the name, and then comes the assistant professor, and then here we have one thing, and then we have one thing. Yeah, so it seems to me that they don't quite match. So what will work for one of them may not work for the other one because it's a different number of entries, it seems. At least that's my only guess as to why that's not working. So that means that if I try 2 here, it should print out like the titles. Okay, let's try the titles, see if it prints out titles. Yeah, so we got titles. So yeah, so it's probably because like maybe 14 will work for one person, but like let's switch it to 13 just to see if we get like some other things. Oh yeah, they all have the same mail code. I didn't see that earlier. So yeah, so see, so some of the mail codes are like in spot 13, but one of them is in spot 14. So they're not lined up, like they're different lengths of lists. So what can we do in that case to sort of fix that issue? Well, you could develop some regular expression to try to figure out find out which of these contains like the word mail code, and then the one immediately after contains the numbers. There's a lot of things that you can do. However, what I want to do is I want to go back to the BeautifulSoup and see if I can search and get those tags from that. So go back to this one. I think it's this one. Might be the one above it. All right, so we have the tag here, and we can comment out this for now. So we have the tag. So I wonder if from here I can extract the address, right? Which contains a mail code. Oh no, the mail code one. The mail code one. That one contains the code. I know they all have the same. I didn't realize that. That's kind of boring, but let's still stick with the mail code. Let's see if we can get this out of there. Okay. So if we can take this out. Now I don't know if that's gonna work. Actually, maybe make our life easy. Maybe we just put mail code here. It'll work instead of having to do anything else. Maybe. We'll see. Oh, yeah, that actually worked out. Okay, cool. So I was thinking like trying to do a query within a query, but actually there isn't any other else that shows mail code. So yeah, that just worked out actually pretty easily. So now let's just feed it into our for loop and call it a day on that one actually. So in this change, all we really gotta do is change this to mail code. And then I don't know what that looks like yet, so let's do it like that first. Let's see what the list looks like. So they all have the same length now, so we got rid of that problem, and they all come out in what is basically the third entry, I think. So let's just get the third entry there. Oh, third entry, but two because the array starts from 0. There we go. And by the way, this right now it's got some space in front of it. You could use Python to get rid of that space. You could also convert it into an integer. There's a lot of things you can do to clean that up even further if you actually want the numerical value instead of a string with numbers in it. So, you know, that's piece of cake. I mean, we got all the information we wanted. What else can we get? This is one last one before we show you other stuff. Let's say we want to get everybody's phone number. That one's more interesting because they're actually different. So if I run the inspector, that one is found under telephone. That's convenient. It's not always going to be this convenient, I'll tell you that. Nice. That was easy. But let's say we wanted to get both the telephones and the names. You know, that seems like more useful, right? Like we're trying to create a directory or something. Like we're trying to sell the contact information of all professors across the US to sell them books or something. You know, I'm sure that exists somewhere because I get a bunch of emails like that. So yeah, so let's print out the list. Print out, actually, okay, let's leave 2 there. But then let's bring back the one with the names, which is this one. So we'll print out both the names and the numbers, like that. Oh, wait, that won't work because this is, my bad. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what I need to do is make a list. Let's make a list. So let's just make a list of, let's call it phone book. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna loop through it once to get the names. So I'm gonna go ahead and say phone book. So how do I want to do it? I want to append, do I want to make it a 2-dimensional list or a 1-dimensional list that's just everything together? Probably 2-dimensional list is better. So we're going to say phone book dot append and insert this as a single item list. Like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing for here, except in this case, I will need a counter probably, so they match. That's kind of not a nice way of doing it, because then what if one person doesn't have a phone book, they all get messed up. Yeah, oh well, there's probably better ways than that, but we'll do that for now. Okay, so in this one, I'm gonna say phone book, and then a specific spot in there, which will be some count. So we'll start a count at 0, and then every time this goes in, it's going to increase by 1. Count equals count plus 1, or you could just say plus equals 1. And then here we'll say count dot append. Do I have one too many parentheses? And this doesn't have to be a list. This can be the actual value of the data itself. Okay. And then let's just print out the list. Print phone book. Let's see what happens. I like how I'm querying the website every single time I'm running this. That's probably not a good idea, but yeah. Did it work? No, I broke it. Didn't work. I got the names, but they all say none. Was that supposed to be a 2 for the telephone? Did I ever check that? I did, because it actually prints it out. Right? Where's that printing from? I don't even have the word print anywhere in there. Hold on. Time out. Run it again. Where is that printing from? Oh, what the heck am I doing here? Oh gosh, I didn't see that print in there was like that. Copy pasting can lead to bad things. Okay, there we go. There we go. So what was happening was I was calling the print function inside of there instead of storing the actual value. I was just storing probably like nothing, the print function return. So there we go. It kind of worked. I mean, I can't guarantee that the names match the numbers because fortunately they are matching, but like technically this would break if one of those faculties didn't have a phone number listed, because probably the things would get out of order. So you would want to do this a little safer. But of course, with the allotted time that we're running out of time, it's just a quick and dirty example. Again, you can clean up this leading space and other things. So, but so far it does seem like all the phone numbers successfully got extracted. If you look here, like the last one, into 5873, and here we can see it into 5873, and then the first one's right too. So like, yeah, it worked out. So what I did, if you were wondering, is I just created a list and I appended to that list. So I made like a list of inside of a list, so that because right now, if I wanted to make this look prettier, I could just simply say for I in phone book print I, and then it looks pretty nice. Well, if you not forget the colon, it looks pretty nice. See, it looks a little bit nicer like this. That's why I did it that way. So you can see it's a list, so you can save this to CSV or whatever after you clean up the leading spaces. I don't know why those are there. Probably from some hierarchy stuff. But yeah, it's very nice, very cool. Okay. So that's really the basics of it. I mean, to summarize, you import your libraries, and then you request the website. Here is your first red flag. Some websites don't like you to ping them too many times because they think you're trying to crash them or DDoS them. So you need to make sure you limit that. So if you're doing multiple requests at times, you may need to use something like your sleep command or just a way to slow down requests. Because if you request it a lot, it will block you out. More than likely temporarily block you out, but it could permanently ban you, and then you're screwed. So be careful with requests, okay? Don't do what I'm doing, which is like every single time I'm testing this code, I'm running it. Fortunately, I know that your website's pretty weak at security in that sense that I can request it as much times as I want, and it doesn't block me unless I like literally put this in the loop and just hit it nonstop. And maybe then I would hope that the security of the system allows it to block the user out so I don't DDoS and shut down the website. Please don't shut down the website if you're following this tutorial. Come blame me for it or something. But yeah, When you run the beautiful content, this is the parsing part, so it cleans it up, and then you saw the different layers. What I'm doing then is I'm basically making sure I request what I want. So I look in the inspector to see what the name of the class or the divider is or the ID, and that's what I'm putting in here with the syntax of the underscore equals, and then putting what I'm looking for, and then I get it back. You don't have to go this far. You could do this with regular expressions or a different kind of own system you set up. But of course, this is kind of like a one-stop shop because it's just how it works out really nicely. And then that's how you get all the information. But of course, this requires you going to the website, in this case, going to the UNLV website and looking at what those names are so that you can get them from here and automate it. But once you got this done now, you can run it as many times as I want. And if I change the website, this would automatically get updated. So there you go. Nice little example of how to run of how to run BeautifulSoup. Okay, so literally the internet, the whole World Wide Web is your playground to try this out, but be careful. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you today is just some examples of other websites that have done cool things. So here's one that they made a little game. This is the link to them, and that one looks like guess game. Where do I have that one? I had it somewhere in here. Here we go. So that link takes you to here, and so just to show you, this runs. This is actually getting from a test website they made. Well, I think it's a test website. I think it's just a dummy website to like play around. It's a website that has some quotes, and so the scraper is going to get the quotes. It's going to get the information as the author. It's going to open the about page, I think, and extract things like the age. So from multiple websites, multiple pages with the same website. Let's look really quickly what's happening here. It's pretty much the same thing that we did. They have a sleep command so that it waits for a page to load in and doesn't like DDoS it. It has that URL, and then it has a section to the URL that it adds so that it can access multiple pages. This would be something that we kind of would want to modify in ours if we wanted to make it work for not just the CS department, but for like all departments, right? And then it has a little loop, and then it's your request. So it's requesting each page one at a time, running it to this BeautifulSoup. In this case, it's using HTML parser instead of using the HTML5. So there's one of the other parsers that you're using. This one I think is built into Python, so they don't have to install anything. So there's that plus. If you have issues installing HTML5 lib. Then it's looking for find all for quote. So where is it getting quote from? If you go in here and click on the quotes and do inspector, you can see that this is called text, and that has a quote in it. And although they call it quote, oh, here the divider has quote up here. So they're getting actually this one instead of getting just a text. Probably because text was not very unique name, and it probably got them like false positives. So the word quote worked out better for them. So that gets them the quote, or actually maybe because quotes gets you all the quotes. No, it's just getting at the first quote, I guess. Okay. So no, it must get them all the quotes how they're running it. Maybe they're interesting. Oh no. Each one has a quote name to it, so that's why it gets them all the quotes, because they all call quotes. Okay, so that's why that works. And then once they do that, they loop through each of them, and they go in and extract individual pieces. Okay, so this is the other thing I was going to do, but I ended up not doing. So if you noticed in mine, when I was going to look for the telephone number, I was trying to see if like I could search it within my initial results that I had, because I knew that those like had everything I wanted, the views rows. But then I just found out that telephone was a quick shortcut because nothing else is called telephone. But imagine that there was a section that I didn't want that had telephone, and I got false positives. What they're doing here, which is what I would recommend you do, is you do a search from the results you already got. So like a search of a search, right? So like your first search gets you the block of stuff you want, and then from there do another search to get it. That would be a better way to do than that I did it, because then you wouldn't have the issue with the names not matching in the case that the phone numbers didn't appear. So yeah, so that could work. That's another way of doing it, okay? What you do is you just call the find function again. You could do find all, but there's probably only going to be one result, so that's why they're using find, make it easier. And then the same thing, so just pass in the same search that you want and do it. So in ours, what that would look like, very quickly, just to show you, because I think that's actually worth showing, is let's get this one. Let's do this at the bottom. So from here, if you run that, so you can see what that looks like right now. Okay, so that's our div code that results for just one person, I think, Chuck Tesler. Okay, poor Chuck. He's the first one on the list. Oh, yeah. He's the one. All right. So from there, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and say dot find class underscore equal, and then do telephone. Okay. Run it again. And as you can see, if we look at the before and after, this one is getting us the entire block, right? That contains everything, like the names, the phone numbers, everything. But I'm running find again on that, and then I'm getting the bottom one, which is just going to get me the telephone numbers. But it's only going to give me the telephone of that specific item, okay? So if I want to make an updated version of this that is only using, that doesn't have the issue with the matching, one of the things that I can do is I can take, so I guess let's actually comment out this one so it doesn't print out anything. Let's do our for loop that we have with the top. We know this gets us the name. And if we want to find the phone number of that name, then all I have to do is say I dot and then add in or find class telephone in here. And then, well, that's going to get us this div. But then if I want to extract the phone number itself, then I can use the same thing I did before, which is I can use get text and so on. So like do get text. And then from get text, I can split lines. Actually, let's see what it looks like without split lines. I'm curious. Oh, okay. That. Oh, no. There's nothing there. Here. Switch that over to print. So we get the phone number, so we get the name, the numbers, and then get rid of the square brackets. And then let's print this one out. Well, we're getting the phone numbers, but we're getting the word phone in there. So now we just need, then we can do the split line to split it by line feeds, basically. That's what split line is doing. And then from there, we can get the phone number, which is probably going to be like maybe the second, which is the third spot. Why am I complaining about that? Oh, split lines, plural. Yeah, there we go. So now we got the name and the phone numbers, okay? This way is better because we're doing everything at once. So then if there is no phone number, then there's just no phone number appearing there. But things will match. In fact, is there anything on the website that is like one person doesn't have? No, unfortunately, it's all very consistent and well done. Maybe like one of them have like an office number or something. Nope. But if they didn't, then that way it would show blank, but everything would still be lined up. So you can see. So see, this is actually brings up a good point. This is why it's good to look at other people's code and references, because then you can grow as a developer and see like, oh, they did it in a better way. Let's try to take some of those ideas and incorporate them, and then you grow. So definitely, when you like I said in the beginning, before you start coding something, see if somebody else has done it. Don't reinvent the wheel when there's probably like a million different tires out there that you could just grab. So you might optimize it to your own liking, but it's better to start from something that works and then just tweak it than it is to just like try to reinvent it. Okay? So, but yeah, so I'm really glad we got to see that. I know we're going a little bit over at the time, but that's okay. Okay. Well, it's okay for me at least. So anyways, going back to this, you can see that that's how they're getting the text, the author stuff, and then they do this to also get additional information probably for the website, because they get the next request and load it in. And then they have a little mini game where you can guess a name. So like if I run this, it's scraping website, and then it's bringing up a quote, and it's asking me like, who said this quote? There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. It's very cool. Who set this quote? Anybody know? I don't know. I could cheat and look at the website, you know, and see. But I don't know. All right, I'm going to since the website has a bunch of Einstein quotes, I'm just gonna go with Einstein. Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, only because I kind of knew that the website had a bunch of Einstein quotes, but or at least I remember seeing an Einstein quote. There's only one with like Marilyn Monroe and something. So let's run it again though. This time let's make a mistake. It's like, you know, the night. That's not very deep, but okay, let's just get a wrong guess. So if there's a wrong guess, what it does is it does a query, or actually, well, it already did the query for this information, but it prints out additional details that it got from the query, such as like the birthday, which is on the website. So like on the page that it has to open manually. So like to get the birthday, it has to make a request to get the bio link from that specific one. So here it is, and then they get the author's born date. So like from here, it has to actually open up like, oh, here's, oh look, there's the ad cycle. Like subliminally was in my mind. But yeah, you can see this here. If you look at this object, then you can see the author's born date. Okay. So yeah, and then, you know, if you just go ahead and just make mistakes here, it gives you a hint of the first name, the last name, so S and M, and if you get it wrong again, then it tells you it was Steve Martin. So, Steve Martin. Oh, I guess that makes sense because he's funny. So yeah. Okay. So just another example. I will share it as well, but it's from this link. I did not come up with this one. And one more that I would like to share with you all is the website for the Amazon one. This is the Amazon one right here, and I will put the link to this one on the description so you can check it out. But it's pretty cool. I tested it and it does work, so you're more than welcome to play with it. You can get things like the reviews, the name of the reviewers, images. For images, what you're really doing is like you inspecting a page with images in it. So like, where's the page with images? Interesting. Oh, I guess here. These are technically, I guess, they might be on, they might not be. We'll see if there could be buttons. But like, here's an image of that UNLV one. Yeah, it's not really an image, but if you, let me just go to the UNLV data analytics. How about that? Data analytics page. So here's the data analytics page, right? So here's an image. So like if we inspect, we can see the URL of that image right there. Even if we, in fact, if we click on it, we could probably just open it on a separate page and it would just be the image. Usually you can do that too if you just right click on it and say like copy image link. And if you paste it, you get that, which is probably the same thing that we saw here. I'll tell you in a second if it is. That same one. It's abstract. Yeah, it's the exact same image. It has this extra add-on to it, but yeah, it's the same image. So like, if you want to download images from a website, then you can use a scraper to get the URLs for the images themselves, and then use a separate application to download the actual images. Like you could probably use curl, a bash command for that. But there are other things you can do. The final one that I wanted to just share with you is that kind of does this sort of thing. Is like I said, the one for the Google image scraper. So I'll also share the link. That's pretty. It's also relatively straightforward. I have actually done this in the past before. It was a long time ago. I don't remember what I actually used, so I don't want to claim I used what they did. But in this case, they show you the free version, and then they also tell you like, hey, we have our API that you can use to make your life easy. So, you know, it's a decision you got to make. If you want to save time, effort, you can always just, you're not hiring someone to do the entire job for you. You're just hiring them to help you in part of it. So like, it's still going to be cheaper, but not free per se. So, but with scraping, you know, it's a cost benefit like anything else. Do you want to do everything from scratch? Do you want to save time? So that's when you decide if you want to pay for like an extra API that helps you get around that. Particularly when it comes to something like Google, where they'll probably block you. In fact, I know we had that issue. Like, you can only do so many requests before Google will block you for downloading Google images. And so if you don't have the patience to like do that, then you can use them, and they can get around that by using different proxies or just actually leaving a job that runs overnight or something. So yeah, that's all I have for you. So hopefully these videos that we've done over the course of the last 3 lectures have given you a nice introduction into scraping and some practical examples on how to do it. So now, like I said, the internet, the world is up to you to explore and to get all that beautiful data so that you can do your projects. But just, knowledge is power. And so now with this, you can get all that power, I guess. All right. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.